math intervention program was mentioned briefly tonight, and it really isn't the topic of tonight. We're looking at the curriculum. But before we can take that step and really develop a math intervention system, we have to have our core curriculum in place. And that's really the decision that is going to be facing you next time. We're not asking you to make a decision tonight, but we are going to be asking you to make a decision on this on February 1st. And there's a lot of pieces that will have to come into play, and Ms. Scott and Mrs. Roderick are working on those things. The event that's going to happen on the 21st would be helpful, would be great background information. But there is a method here to start getting these things in place. I wish I could tell you they were all going to be in place by the end of the month. Unfortunately, it won't happen that fast. But we are working on it. And we are going to get those critical pieces in place so that our kids can be successful. And over the long haul, when we look back 5 years and 10 years, and we need to look before that, I'm certainly not saying we need to wait 5 years to look at our progress. We will be monitoring our progress along the way. But my goal is when we look back 5 and 10 years, is that we made the right decisions at these points, and we put the right things into place, so we start getting the kind of results that our kids deserve and our families expect. So a lot of work's gone into this. I appreciate your questions tonight. This is a difficult issue because it's not what we experienced. Math doesn't look like math instruction. It ain't your mama's math. Okay, sorry, Carrie. I'm not from Texas. If you go on the 21st, it won't take you long to figure out that Melissa is from Texas. But we are going to continue to endeavor on this. And Laura's right. We've got a lot of priorities, but this is a high priority for us. If kids need to be literate, and kids need to be able to do math in order to be successful in just about anything else. And so it is something that's a priority. Mark?
Did I hear you say we can't do any interventions until we adopt curriculum?
Not that we can't do any, but typically you're going to have your core curriculum in place before you really structure your intervention program, because it's that core curriculum that's going to drive those interventions. So we have some of that going on, but we have a lot of buildings right now where, best curriculum development practice, best instructional protocol practice would be first have that core curriculum in place and then build your intervention program. Is that fair to say?
That's clear. Because you've got to have success in the core before you start to decide what you need to supplement with that. So, absolutely.
It just struck me because one of the anxieties out there was kids missing their math. They were in our process of developing this. Kids were missing out on 3rd grade or 4th grade math. They just weren't getting it, and now it's catch up. And usually catch up is intervention, and if we can't do intervention, that creates a real problem.
And it's probably a nomenclature thing. Intervention really should be kids that aren't getting the core curriculum and need additional support to get that core curriculum. With the shifts that are happening here, we're creating some other gaps. The standards are creating some of the things that used to be taught in 5th grade, now we're being taught in 4th grade. So what happened to that kid that was a 4th grader last year that went to 5th grade? Where does he get that? That really shouldn't technically be an intervention thing, but it's a gap. It's something we have to address. So it's probably more of a terminology thing.
Thank you very much, ladies. Appreciate you coming in and taking your time and all the work that you put into this. Thank you so much. Mr. Nordby, I hear you have a proposal to make things a little bit different at the high school.
Yeah. A little bit. Okay, Mr. Kipp and I were here a few months ago with this same presentation, and just strictly as an informational item. But tonight we're after I guess a lot of discussion and a lengthy process. We're here to I guess make a recommendation, and this is the culmination of our work on Board Goal 7.3. which we were charged with investigating a few years ago, investigating scheduling models such as block schedule versus 7-period day for grades 9, 12 to determine the best model for delivering instruction and efficient use of staff, or efficient means of staffing. Just a review, back in 2013-14, we were charged with this board goal. We formed a committee to examine it and to take a look at a variety of different schedules. We were pulling off schedules from internet sites and talking to colleagues from all around the country, and we put them all together. At the end of the year, we felt confident taking a look at different types of schedules that we posed 2 questions to our staff in our final staff meeting. Question 1, do you favor a change to the current schedule? 70% of our staff said yes, we need to do something different than what we're doing now. The second question was, if we change the schedule, what would be your preferred option? And we gave them a few different options to consider: 7-period day, a modified block, things like that. 78% favored the 7-period day. With that information, we felt pretty secure that our staff had spoken and they wanted to look at something different, and in particular, look at the 7-period day. So, the following year, 2014-15, we put together a committee. This is the members of that committee. Mr. Kipp was on that committee. Mr. Tone was on that committee. Mr. Smithson was on that committee. They spoke to you earlier tonight. We have representatives on this committee from administration, career and tech ed. We have all core classes or all core subjects represented, as well as vocational instruction. We have vocational counselors. We have career and tech ed coordinator. They represent a pretty good cross-section of the school, including 4 members from GCEA that were on that committee. The schedule that they came up with is the one that we showed you earlier, a 7-period day with 5 class periods. I'll let Mr. Kipp describe what the schedule looks like in more detail.
Well, the first thing that we were charged with was keeping a schedule within the time frame that we currently have, because there's other factors that come into play when we're scheduling kids. One of them is transportation. So currently we're looking at the transportation as our school starting at 8:10 in the morning. So we didn't want to change that because that would affect routes for other schools in the district. And we also have students get out at 3:20. And not only does that affect transportation, but activities and after school athletics and meetings and opportunities for kids. The next thing that we had to take into consideration, because of the size of our school and the number of students we had, is feeding kids. Our lunches, currently we have 4 lunches. That was one of the stipulations that we looked at in terms of the schedules. We had to accommodate roughly 2,100 kids in lunches, averaging about 550 per lunch period. The capacity of our cafeteria and commons is around 560. So we're pushing it very close to the current capacity of the facility itself for lunch. There could be some, if we have more students, we could add more tables and more things like that. But it would be in the best interest to keep those about relatively equal in size for 4 lunch periods. That helps the cafeteria staff, it helps supervising students and the transition from class to class. So those were some big considerations in the creation of this 7-period day schedule. And as you can see at the top, we kept a zero-hour period that we currently have for, right now, the curriculum of weights classes. It's an optional class for kids to take before school starts. When we looked at the schedule, we had several members of the committee look at what would work for the best time, length of time, as well as passing periods for our kids. The current passing period is 6 minutes. The passing period for a 7-period day would be 5. The class schedule would be roughly 50 minutes, making it relatively easy to keep track of the daily schedule. Whereas when you do 84, 85 minutes like we currently are, we might have one class start at 9:42, another class at 11:12, those sort of things. Try to keep it very consistent in the structure. In addition to that, we have a current mentoring class in place. We wanted to maintain that for teachers as well as for students to get an opportunity for extra help with classes or curriculum. It also worked out really well mathematically to have the 4 classes along with the 25-minute mentoring. So we incorporated that into the lunch period, making 4th hour 50-minute class with a 25-minute mentoring and a 25-minute lunch period. So that's how we kind of went about structuring that particular daily schedule.
Okay, before we get to this, I want to kind of go over a couple of things that we thought were big advantages for the 7-period day. First of all, increased time for teachers and students to work together. Every other day, teachers and students would be together for 100 minutes versus 84. Over time, that adds up. That adds up to more instruction time for our kids. There's less reteaching when you're seeing them every day. I believe it was Mrs. Cook who mentioned, the retention time and the studies that have been done. So if you see them repeatedly, short bursts, short times, with a short interval in between sessions, they're going to retain more. You have to reteach less. With fewer teachers on plan at any one time in a 7-period day schedule with one planning time, you're going to be able to lower average class sizes. You will have fewer teachers who will be off at any one time in the day, meaning more places to schedule kids. Also, there should be fewer issues with activities, with either teachers or students missing for an activity. You get more constant contact. And for our students who just need support, ESL students, special education students, this is a more consistent schedule for them. They know each day, they've got a rhythm, they've got a routine, they know where they're supposed to be, when they're supposed to be there, and it really does help them find their place. So what we proposed, what the group proposed through last year and into this year, was that the current class and next year's class, as they went through, would retain the 26.5 credit requirement for graduation. The current juniors, as they went through, would only be missing the opportunity in a 7-period day for 1 accrued credit. They could still get 31 credits. So 26.5 is easily attainable for them. So not as big an impact. The classes after 2017 would work on the 24 credit requirement. Every year they would have one fewer opportunity to gain credit towards graduation. The one exception there was an exception that was brought up earlier today, and we have about 30 in this meeting. We have about 30 students each year that graduate after 3 years. What I would propose that we do as far as this sliding requirement is we honor our contract that we have made with those students. That if they have already contacted a counselor and are a sophomore in our pipeline with a signed plan of study from their counselor saying, I would like to graduate in 3 years, we contract with them and say, yes, if you maintain a full schedule and then get 2 more credits, you would have what you needed to graduate in 3 years. And I would like to keep that promise and that contract for those students. To say whatever we have contracted with you as an agreement between you and the counselor to say you do these things, you're going to get those credits. Those kids in the pipeline, I'd like to keep that promise to them as they go through. And that's about 20 or 30 kids per graduating class. That's not quite 10% of a graduating class. It's a little less than that. Right now we're graduating 450 hopefully this year or a little more. But still, that's an important number, and it's a contract that we made with them. We've signed the papers and said if you do this, this can happen. And I'd like to propose keeping that promise to those kids that we've made with our staff. Those kids that are already in the pipeline, that have met with their counselor and developed a plan of study. In our graduation credits and requirements and things we'd like to change for the 7-period day, as we told you earlier, we'd like to change our graduation requirements to 24. To do that, we would like to make no adjustments to our core credits. We would like to keep them where they are. That includes language arts and speech. That includes social studies, math, and science. What we currently have is in line with Kansas Board of Regents requirements for qualified admissions. And so we would like to keep our core the same as it is. Our core is strong. We propose keeping it that way. So language arts, 3.5 credits of straight English 1, English 2, English 3, and then either half credit of English 4 or college English, including 1 credit of speech additionally. Social studies, 3 credits. Math, 3 credits. Science, 3 credits. The area that we would like to make adjustments in, there were 2, and those are just, well, 3 actually, they're all electives. In the elective areas, the areas that aren't part of the core, the committee proposed reducing by 1/2 credit, or 1 class, physical education and computer technology. From 1 to 1/2 in computer technology. There is no credit requirement for computer technology for either the Board of Regents qualified admissions or Kansas graduation requirements. Then we discussed and came upon the requirements for electives to be 8 credits. That made 16 classes worth of electives, 8 total credits, getting us a total of 24. That would allow students to continue the practice of graduating in 3 years if they took 4 additional courses over the first 3 years. They'd take night school, E2020 classes, something like that. 4 classes or 2 additional credits. And to graduate in 3 1/2 years. That can still be, each of those are still attainable with either extra coursework or just by taking the normal load of coursework. So we won't be changing that practice that we have put into place. And as I said, we've chosen not to change the core and to phase it in starting with the sophomore class, with the exception of those that have early graduation contracts with us. We've already gone through the advantages.
This was
of the
presented to the
Well,
curriculum council as
Yep.
well.
we
They
did
were in
that.
favor of the change to 24 credits.
We did that Monday? Was that Monday's meeting? Yeah, curriculum council? Yeah. Okay. We've already gone through some of the advantages that were listed on there. This is a presentation that we gave you before. Disadvantages or barriers with the 7-period day. We've talked a lot about current schedule allowing for 1.5 more electives required for graduation. I did a study just, last week with the counselors. I asked my counselors to research all of their counselees, all their students, and to tell me how many of them leave Garden City High School with full schedules all 4 years, all the way through taking advantage of every single elective that they had the opportunity to take advantage of. Out of our 450 graduates, now we eliminated some students that were in special education programs where we are contracted with them to serve them for full days, and ESL programs where they typically may stay for full days of instruction. But out of our 450 anticipated graduates, there were 4. 4 students who went through all of their 4 years at Garden City High School and were taking advantage of all of their credits. Less than 1%. Yes?
I have to correct that, because that's misleading. I have a senior, and because I've heard this,
Yep.
I required him to have a full schedule.
Yep.
It has been confirmed with his counselor that they could not come up with a full schedule for him.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
not always.
Well, no, it's not. It's sometimes because of college classes or other classes that they wanted to take, they don't end up doing that, but for a lot of our kids, they just end up taking what they need to graduate, what they need to be eligible. Or as in the case of a quarter of our students, graduate after 3.5 years. So a full quarter to a third, depending on the year. Sometimes we have more 3-year graduates, sometimes we have more semester graduates, leave a semester early. So, yeah, right now we have a majority. Now, for some you can't, we could put them in another weights class or an additional student aid class or something to fill a schedule if we wanted to, but yeah.
I think that number of 4 is kind of misleading because a lot of those students and the parents, like myself, want the kid to have a full schedule, and it's discouraged at the counselor level, honestly. Or it's presented as, well, we could just fill your day with stuff you don't really want if you want to, which, I think a lot of that's presentation.
It may be, yes.
Either way, that's a concern to me, if there's students that want to use that full,
Take
or
advantage of
parents
that.
that want that, and that opportunity is not there because of the way that schedule was, then.
I think what you're saying is completely accurate. I just think that number 4 is skewed.
And and it may be in certain situations. I would say that, just in my experience, a large preponderance of students just choose to take what they need to graduate, or choose to take, in some kids' cases, they don't take them all because they want to schedule, and they choose to schedule classes at the college. And so that doesn't allow them necessarily to fill their schedule because of when those classes are. So they're not taking classes at the high school, they are taking classes at the college. And so for a number of our seniors who use that as a step, a bridge to college, some just go to work. Others use it as a bridge to college. Yes.
Does that change any with the 7-period day as far as the opportunity to do that?
No, they should be able to get everything they need to graduate in 3.5 years, and so they should still have the option or the opportunity to either stay longer or start investigating things at the college if they'd like to.
Now, I mean, just logistically, that's not a bigger challenge with a shorter class period. I guess you could double block or something.
Yeah, and that's what happens. A lot of kids will take a class at the college, causing them now to double block. If you take a class at the college, it's every day from 12:30 to 1:30. Well, you've got to double block that at the high school. Because every other day you'd have a different class in there, so that causes you right there not to have a full schedule. So yes, it happens. We've got kids just choosing for one reason or another. They leave electives on the table oftentimes when they leave. If students want to stay, it's there. We provide English 1, English 2. They can take almost a full load of college credit at the high school if they'd like to, and be a part of it. They don't have to go off, but sometimes they want to pursue things that we just don't offer. Emergency medical responder is one great example. It's a class a lot of kids take, but it's 3 hours at the college in the afternoon, which means you've got to lose your high school schedule for the afternoon in any semester you might want to take that class.
And as I mentioned earlier, we kept 0 hour on the schedule. We really would like to increase the opportunities during 0 hour. We've had teachers approach us asking if they could have another class, another curricular class besides just weights or a PE class in 0 hour. It's done around the state in other 7-period days to have hours both before and after school as additional elective and core curriculum classes offered at those times. We already offer a night school course from 3:45 to 5:15. That would be equivalent to an 8th hour as well. And we have a lot of kids who take advantage of that to either graduate early or recover credits, or just because they choose that for a core curriculum class allows them to have another elective during the day if they choose.
Is there any reason why that can't be displayed on a graphic like this?
It could have.
We
In the
0 hour
schedule,
on
we
there,
have
just
0 on
didn't
the
add it.
schedule. Night school is something we already do. That wouldn't change. And so we offer all of those, as well as an E2020 and Edgenuity online programming offering during the day, as well as night school. So there's ways to get additional credits.
One of the things that, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I'm
Go.
Okay, or those take classes with, for example, cooking or those kinds of things. Have you surveyed your teachers and maybe come up with a number of how many of those classes you would need to block in order for them to maintain the level of class time and quality of their class?
Well, as far as total class time, they're gonna have more in a 7-period day. We haven't yet, but we haven't had it approved yet. And so we didn't want to put cart before the horse in doing some of those. Classes like zoology you're not required to be taught at the zoo. If we thought the travel was going to be a problem with them or couldn't work them into a first hour or a last hour kind of thing, we could teach them at the high school if we needed to. Zoology classes taught in a number of different communities that don't have access to a zoo. We're just lucky enough to be able to do that. We may also approach the zoo docents and have them bring materials to us instead of we go to them.
I would just be
Yeah.
curious to maybe have an idea of how many teachers would be interested in doing that. Because I understand too, having it every single day, they could have a lab every other day or something, but I would just be curious as to.
No, we haven't done the survey yet. I know I've heard from one teacher in our just when I asked for that from the staff at our last staff meeting, one teacher in our trades area who said at one time I was in favor of double blocking the classes, and now I've done investigation with colleagues around the state, and I'm not anymore. I can do it both ways, and I've taught both ways. But we haven't done anything formal. When we schedule as we implement, it's going to be driven by those department leaders, by our building leadership team. For instance, I'm going to give our band instructor the freedom like he has now to schedule when he wants early morning practices, how he wants his first hour band to look. How right now they take advantage every other day and march in the mornings, every other day. They come in and they march at 7:40 before school starts. I'm going to allow him the freedom in his program to decide if he wants to do that every other day as currently, 3 days a week, 2 days a week. That's his prerogative, it's his program. And so I want the teachers to design what they're going to do in their program as much as possible for this. I want this to be a collaborative effort in building a schedule. And that's the way I've scheduled since I've taken the reins of doing the master schedule for the building. It's been collaborative with department chairs coming in and saying, here's who we need teaching these classes, when we need these classes offered, and helping with the time frame. I want it to be, the only way I think it can work for kids as effectively as it needs to be is if we get input from all of our teachers, department chairs, actual department members, building leadership team. I would like to have a student council, a couple of student council reps on there, and do this as a collaborative venture.
That was my question, so.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't, and then what I've told staff members who have come to me to ask about it is, it's a blank slate. What we have now, and that we're working on, is this skeleton. And it's going to be up to our teachers and our department chairs and our departments to put the flesh on it. How is this going to work for them? How is it going to work for kids? We've got a framework, but as we build this schedule, we haven't been drawing lines. There's nothing that we have to do because we've always done it that way. This gives us a chance to build something from the ground up that really works for teachers and works for kids. And so I want it to be that kind of process. We also are in contact with another big player in this whole thing, and that's going to be the community college, and keeping that partnership with the community college, with our students going, either taking classes on our campus or traveling to the college. And so Mrs. Scott is our liaison for the community college, and she's in contact with the reps there because they have satellites and adjuncts in different high schools around in western Kansas, and they're on 7-period days also. And so it can work. So essentially, what we're here today to ask for the board is, we were here presenting the same thing on an informational basis only earlier in the fall. And so we're here to ask, it's gone to the curriculum council, as Mr. Kipp said, and now we're bringing it to you to make a decision on, or give us our go-ahead on new graduation requirements, bell schedule, and February 1st meeting. A vote at that meeting would give us enough time to be enrolling kids for next fall. We will need to be making those decisions about what classes we double block, what classes we single block, what classes we may need to move to beginning or ending of the day to facilitate, additional time if they need, or 0 hours, to make sure that kids have those opportunities to get what they need. As Mr. Kipp mentioned, I think 0 hour can be a great thing for us. We have had teachers coming and saying, I'd love to teach a 0 hour course. And that's, I think 0 hour was something that we did more frequently in the other high school when we were on a 7-period day. There was a wide number, a large variety of 0 hour courses. And we had a lot of staff members who were there teaching at that time who would like to go do that again.
Mr. Norby, almost like the earlier discussion we had on curriculum, there's been quite the process involved here. And you've been involved in it, wearing several different hats over time. And since you presented to us last, I'm just kind of curious, and sorry to put you on the spot, but the way you're presenting this, I can't help but ask, what have you learned between then and now that you feel is pretty significant about moving to a 7-period day?
Well, yeah, since the process started, I've changed roles at the high school and taking just a global look at the high school and the way that kids come and go on a larger scale, not just my academy, and their movement through the day, and then visiting with a number, I've been in charge of working with a number of different departments and a number of different teachers in differing academies. Just how much in the block, despite the fact that we have 84 minutes at a time, how pressed we are for time to get things done when it comes through the end of the year. I think that's been my biggest aha in working with math teachers and working with science teachers, and despite the fact that we do get them we would in a block schedule get them for longer chunks at a time, the fact that we would have so much more actual time to spend with kids, that perspective really hit home and gave us a chance to work with all of them.
Mr. Kipp, I have a question for you, since you were on the committee. Looking at that list, I think I have a pretty good impression of a lot of those people, because they've come and presented on different things, not this, but have come, and I know some of them personally. Would you say that this committee was a yes group, or was that a group of people who would feel comfortable speaking up and disagreeing with, say, Mr. Morales, since at the time he was the principal?
Well, I think as we looked at it as a committee, the first objective was to be as objective as possible at looking at, first of all the different types of schedules. And then when we looked at what the advantages and disadvantages of the 7-period day was, actually, we came up with a lot of disadvantages first. What sort of things would cause this not to be a viable schedule for our school? And then from there, a lot of counter arguments as to why this would be good. So I think they were very objective, and I want to thank all of the committee members, but all the teachers as well. I had an opportunity to go to PLCs for 2 days twice to present and discuss and get commentary. And there was nobody who was looking at it in, I don't want to say with a bias. They had their own opinions as to things, or reservations as to why the schedule would change. They were all thinking about what's best for kids. They're all very passionate about their profession, and they looked at it with as much objectivity as to how they think the schedule should be for the best education for the kids in the school. There was nobody who was vindictive or adversarial. It was a really good discussion throughout the PLCs and throughout the process as to what people believed to be right. And not everybody agreed on what was right for kids, and nobody will always agree on what's right for kids. They all have their own personal opinions, they all have their own professional opinions, and they were always very forthcoming with doubts, questions, concerns, as well as we have the four that presented in the time at this meeting to say, hey, look, we think this would be good. And we had people present in PLC and discuss in PLC why they didn't think this would be good, or why there should be some changes, or what should we look at if we do this, and how should we go about looking at something if this doesn't. So I think it was a good mesh of people. I think James, when he led the committee, started out with, hey, we're looking at this because the first committee, which generated the discussion as to the 7-period day, said that they were in favor of looking at the 7-period day. That wasn't a, yes, we're gonna adopt it. This was, hey, let's investigate all the aspects we can. So when we go in front of somebody and present this to them, we have as much information as we can have for all the questions that we're gonna face. And that included students. I've met with students even this past week to discuss the process and to discuss what we were gonna do in the proposal.
Thank you.
Did you guys survey the student body as a whole?
No, we haven't surveyed the student body as a whole, and I decided not to through my tenure here so far at the high school, just because there was a lot that hadn't been decided yet. There was a lot that still had to go through negotiations, still had to go through a lot of things, and I wanted to wait until we had something firm to stand on before really going through and then I guess adding a lot of confusion to the mix of just throwing things up in the air with kids. Now it's time to do that. Now it's time to go to student council and talk and say, here's what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it.
I did get an opportunity to meet with several classes, especially our AVID classes.
Your AVID classes.
They were writing some essays about the transition from a block schedule to a 7-period day. And there was a lot of questions. 30 kids in a class probably had 100 questions. Imagine 2,165 students asking as many questions as they had for the schedule. As Steve said, it had some confusion, but it also kind of spreads out the ideas to the point where we're not sure exactly what the intent is with the questions. Students often have a personal agenda, whatever that may be, and so those questions may not always be something that we look at as an objective focus for the committee.
I think it's notable that you explained that the committee, when first starting to work, came up with a list of why this wouldn't work, and then transitioned from that as it got more information and that kind of thing. And I wonder to what extent that would happen for the students. I know the couple that live in my house certainly started off that way.
My son talked about homework.
Yeah,
That was
homework's a big
deal.
concern.
Tests in one day.
But homework's a big concern for parents too, maybe for different reasons. I'm wondering, my question, I guess, is, one of the things I know you're passionate about, Mr. Nordby, is your team at the high school and your teachers. And one of the agonizing aspects of going to a 7-period day is the loss of planning time for teachers. And so, without, say,